Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Anton here. So we're back with a brand new video, and today I just wanted to kind of give you guys a brief introduction into TypeScript and, whether or not if you should really start using TypeScript for your projects. Okay, so TypeScript, what in the world is that? I'm sure you guys have heard it a lot, and you've, always heard people saying, hey, you should use TypeScript instead of JavaScript, it's so much better, but you were too lazy to adapt to TypeScript. You probably looked at it, got afraid, and closed it down. But don't worry, I'm going to make TypeScript as easy as possible for you guys. Okay, so now the big question, what is TypeScript? Now, again, I'm sure you heard TypeScript is just a superset of JavaScript. Well, what does that even mean? Okay, the simple answer is TypeScript is just JavaScript with more features. That's really all it is. It's just another language that is literally the same as JavaScript, but with many more additional features that you can use. TypeScript is open source and maintained by Microsoft, and it was primarily designed for large applications, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it for a simple Hello World application. And yeah, they have their own extension as well, just like JavaScript files do. All TypeScript files end with .ts. So TypeScript itself, the way it works is it uses a compiler to transpile its code down to JavaScript. So what that means is you'll open up your text editor, you'll write some code, you'll save it as a TS file, and then you'll use tsc command to transpile that TypeScript file down into a readable JavaScript file. So you can still read the code, you can still open up and you can still see a bunch of, alphanumeric characters in it, but it's all transpiled down so that way the browser and other environments can understand that JavaScript syntax, the JavaScript language. Okay, because the browser itself doesn't understand TypeScript. Okay, we need to go through a transpilation process in order for us to make sure that the transpiled version of our source code is compatible. Okay. And like I said earlier, all JavaScript code is valid TypeScript, but not all TypeScript code is valid JavaScript. Okay, it doesn't work. It's not a two-way street. Okay, you can write whatever you want in a TypeScript file that is valid JavaScript, but you cannot write TypeScript code in a JavaScript file. Okay, and we're going to look at a lot of the features with TypeScript, and you're going to see, wow, this language is actually pretty awesome. And yeah, like I said, TypeScript provides many features that JavaScript does not have out of the box. And to name a couple, we have type annotation, which is probably one of the most popular ones that a lot of people enjoy. I personally enjoy this one, and it basically enforces type checking. And a good example would be, let's say, if you wanted to make sure that certain parameters are certain types, you would type check those parameters to make sure that no one is passing in a number for a parameter that is supposed to expect a string. There are generics in type erasure, there are interfaces, type inference, enumerator types, and many more. We're not going to go into all of them, but I highly suggest you guys to look through them, Google it, do some research, and then see if this is something that interests you. And if it doesn't interest you, well, I think maybe you just need a little bit more. Maybe you might need some training wheels at first to understand why those things are pretty cool, and then maybe you'll consider using it. So, a couple of common questions that a lot of JavaScript developers ask themselves. Well, I'm a beginner. I just started coding in JavaScript. Should I use TypeScript? So the short answer is yes. Okay, yes, you should definitely use TypeScript because, again, you have nothing to lose, and you benefit so much because you learn, an entire new language that has a bunch of other features. I'm not saying TypeScript itself is an entire new language. I'm just saying that there are a bunch of new features, and you might end up working for a company that uses TypeScript someday. So it would be definitely important to understand how it works. Now, in my opinion, and I come from a Java background, majority of the features in TypeScript already existed in Java. And I honestly think TypeScript would be a great language to learn even if you are a beginner, but a lot of the additional features may throw you off if you're a beginner, that is. And I mean completely new to programming. So what do you do if this is the case? Well, you have nothing to lose. Open up your text editor, write some TypeScript code. If it works, if you understand it, great. Read some documentation, watch a YouTube video. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, if you feel like this is something that you don't want to do, then that's fine. Go back to JavaScript. You have nothing to lose. And hey, look, in the long run, you might end up finding something else that you actually enjoy using, and that'd be an extra tool under your belt. So another thing is, I want to practice object-oriented concepts. Is TypeScript a great language for it? Absolutely. And this is, again, someone who came from primarily a Java background. I was actually very disappointed that JavaScript did not have a lot of the object-oriented programming features, such as enumerated types, interfaces, generics, abstract classes. And TypeScript has these features, which is ridiculously awesome. And like I said, TypeScript transpiles down all of those features, all of the TypeScript code into JavaScript. Okay, so you can actually look at the source code after it's been transpiled, and you can actually kind of see how they're implemented. And if your goal is to become a stronger object-oriented programmer without having to shift languages, then TypeScript is definitely for you. Okay, if you want to stick with JavaScript, but you want to maintain your understanding of object-oriented programming, definitely learn TypeScript. Okay, and side note, object-oriented programming is a very important concept to understand, especially if you're trying to get hired, because many interviewers will always ask some base questions. They'll ask you things like, what is inheritance? What are abstract classes? What are generics? They'll ask you a whole bunch of things. So it's a win-win. And now the final FAQ, how can I practice TypeScript and what frameworks work well with TypeScript? So you can practice TypeScript by just writing TypeScript code the same way you write JavaScript code. So you go inside your text editor, open up Visual Studio Code, start writing some TypeScript code, make sure you have the TypeScript compiler already installed on your computer, and then you transpile that TypeScript code using the TSC compiler, the TypeScript compiler, and then you run the JavaScript file that was generated from the TypeScript compiler, either with Node, or you can run in your browser. Okay, and you can also use certain frameworks that are heavily based on TypeScript, such as Angular, or you can use pretty much any library or framework that you've already used, but in TypeScript. And like I said, all JavaScript is valid TypeScript, so you can literally use either Discord.js, Express, any library that you can think of that is on the npm registry. You can incorporate that into TypeScript. And yeah, that's pretty much it for our quick little introduction. So I'm going to show you guys how to get TypeScript set up. Okay, so the first thing that you want to have obviously installed is Visual Studio Code or Atom or whatever text editor you use. I always use Visual Studio Code, so I would suggest using that. And you also want to open up your command prompt. Make sure you have a folder created so you can practice writing your code, and make sure you have your PowerShell or terminal opened up in the directory that you're working in. In this case, I'm in TypeScript-test. If I want to list all files, I can do ls or dir. You can see we don't have any files, okay? And what you want to do is, obviously, you want to make sure you have npm installed. And npm is installed when you install Node, okay? So make sure you have npm installed. You can verify by just doing npm-v, and it'll tell you the version. We're going to do npm install-g TypeScript. This is going to install the latest version. I already have it already, so it just says updated. And if you type tsc, you're going to see that we have a bunch of output. We have output in the console, and it gives you a bunch of options. You don't have to really read through it. Okay, but let's just go ahead and do something simple. So we're going to go into Visual Studio Code. We're going to create a new file. And we're not going to create a JavaScript file. We're going to create a TypeScript file. So that's .ts. Okay, and by default, Visual Studio Code will support TypeScript, which is pretty awesome. So we can just simply write a console log. Hello world. Remember, all JavaScript code is valid TypeScript. So we're going to start off with a simple console log. Now to run this file, what we want to do is we want to transpile hello.ts. So you want to make sure you do tsc hello.ts, and you're going to notice that there's going to be a JavaScript file that was generated. And now we can actually run this JavaScript file by doing node hello.js, and it's going to run it. So that's a very basic example. You can also set up a tsconfig. So you can do that by doing tsc --init. It's going to create a tsconfig.json file. And this is primarily used for setting up certain things for the compiler. So you can have it build all of your source code to a certain directory. So I think that's right over here. So let's set that up to build it to a lib folder. So now if I delete hello.js, if I do tsc, notice how it generated this lib folder, and we can see we have hello.js. And you can see we have hello.js. All right, let's write a couple more things. So I want to show you guys some cool features that are part of TypeScript. So one of the features that I mentioned earlier were type annotations and type inference. So we can do something like this. Let's go ahead and create a function. Let's call this add nums. And we're going to go ahead and pass in 2 parameters. So I'll do num1, num2. And we'll just return num1 plus num2. Okay. And you're going to see now we actually have a warning, and it says num1 implicitly has an any type. So right now, if I wanted to call this function, I can pass in any type that I want. Let's go ahead and store that return value into a variable. Let's log it. Okay. And let's just run tsc. And you're going to see we actually have a couple of errors. And you're going to see that it says num2 implicitly has any type. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to actually give this a certain type. So let's give it a number. And we do that by doing colon and then specifying the type. So we're basically saying, hey, look, this parameter num1 needs to be a number at all times. It cannot be a string. It cannot be undefined. It cannot be a function. It cannot be an object. It must be a number. Likewise for num2, we do the same thing. The parameter name, colon, the type. So now, if I want to compile, inside lib, we can see right over here that it looks pretty much the same. But remember, the tsc compiler takes care of all of these things for us. So obviously, they really doesn't look that much different. Okay, but I think you guys get the whole point of type inference and type annotations. Okay, so now we can also specify a return type of the function. So what that means is we're basically saying, hey, look, this function is always going to return a specific type every single time. So this function is always going to return a number. So we do colon in front of the parentheses and then the type. So now, if I log, let's first compile our code. And I'm going to go ahead and run the hello file, hello.js file, and you're going to see it says 5. And we can also specify a type for this variable. So you can say, hey, look, this has to be a number. Okay, so now we know 100% that result is always going to be a number. Now, if I said, hey, look, result is going to be a string, we're going to have an error. It's going to say type number is not assignable to type string. And the reason why it's giving us that error is because, well, add nums is a function that returns a number, and we annotated the type as well of the function. But over here, we're trying to assign a number to a string. Okay, and if we try to compile it, it's going to give us an error. And you can kind of start to think, wow, this is actually pretty cool because, you know, there might be some times where you're writing so much code and you might accidentally pass in an invalid argument into your function. It won't break the code. It'll still work, but it'll produce some kind of value that you don't want. And TypeScript helps you solve that issue by having type annotations and type inference. Okay. And now let's go ahead and do one more quick thing. So I'm going to go ahead and use an enumerated type, or enum, and let's just call this, let's see, roles. So enums are a great way. So enums are a great way to define quick constants. So let's say, for example, I have an enumerated type of roles, and inside these roles, I want to have something like moderator is a value of 10, or let's see, let me do administrator is a value of 11. We need to put a comma. The moderator, and let's just say trial moderator is equal to 9, and etc. So this is a great way to create constants very easily, and it looks pretty cool. If I try to console log roles, let's compile it. And before I show you guys the source code of hello.js, let me actually run this real quick. So notice how it literally looks like an object. We go in here, we can kind of see what's going on. So pretty much enums are pretty useful. So if you come from a language like Java, you've seen enums before, and you definitely have an idea of how they work. And so that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully I was able to give you guys a brief and informative introduction on TypeScript. In my next couple of videos, I will go ahead and show you guys how to incorporate TypeScript into some projects, maybe with a Discord bot. But yeah, so until then, I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.